This is the Central California Pacific Coast Highway. It's one of the world's most scenic roads. 93 miles of twists and turns through the desolate beauty of the Pacific coastline and Big Sur. This is a road for people who love to drive. If it's your intention to make it from Los Angeles to San Francisco in the shortest amount of time, don't take the Coast Highway. It looks like a straight shot on the map, but there are few places where you can travel over 100 yards in a straight line. The scenery almost defies description, not only in its quality, but the sheer quantity of it. Every turn of the road brings another spectacular vista. Take any mile of the Coast Highway and transplant it anywhere else in the country, it would become a monument. It's difficult to enjoy the scenery and pay the necessary close attention to driving. You'll find yourself pulling over every 5 minutes to take in the view. And several hours later, you'll discover you've only traveled 20 miles and have 60 more to go. The Pacific Coast Highway runs the entire length of California. But the entrance to the Big Sur area to the south is San Simeon. Now, there's plenty to explore on the Coast Highway between Los Angeles and Big Sur. Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, Morro Bay. But we decided to start our coastal tour at San Simeon, home of the magnificent estate of publishing baron William Randolph Hearst, Hearst Castle, and it's almost 200 miles north of Los Angeles. It seems odd that anyone would invest the time and energy building such an elaborate structure so far from civilization. But Hearst had an attachment to this certain piece of land. He owned several thousand acres of it. Hearst's father was a wealthy rancher and began buying land in the region in the mid-1800s. As a boy, young William would spend time in these hills in a log cabin here, savoring the view of the ocean. After Hearst created his media empire, he thought that it might be a good idea to build something a tad more comfortable than the log cabin of his boyhood days. So he called his friend, the famous San Francisco architect Julia Morgan, and asked her if she would help him design his new ranch house. She was greatly in demand at the time and initially turned Hearst down. He later convinced her to work on the design on the weekends. Well, she agreed, not dreaming that she would be spending weekends for the next 25 years there. It's called the Hearst Castle, but William Randolph just thought of it as the ranch at San Simeon. Just a place to kick back and relax, perhaps have a few friends over. But there are few, if any, ranches quite like this one. It's an eclectic mixture of Moorish, Gothic, Roman, and even a little Oriental architecture thrown in for good measure. But somehow it works. The Hearst mansion is ornate without being gaudy. His guest houses alone would be described as mansions by present-day standards. Hearst's study alone covered the entire third wing of the main building. When he was here, he brought his staff and ran his empire by telephone and telegraph. Now, it may be hard to believe, but life around here was pretty casual. Guests could wander into the kitchen for a snack any time, day or night. The only formal meal was dinner in the quaint little dining hall. "Pass the ketchup, please. Go long." Hearst must have been fond of swimming because he built two of the most ornate swimming pools in existence. The outdoor pool is lined with columns from real Roman temples. The indoor pool is set with thousands of gold-encrusted tiles and lit with subdued marble globes looking like dozens of moons hanging in suspension at night. A pretty romantic place, all in all. We can only imagine what went on in this sordid, steaming, promiscuous pit of passion, with nubile and willing Hollywood starlets. Shame, shame, simply disgraceful. Take that, William Randolph. Well, actually, William Randolph Hearst would probably appreciate the description rather than find it offensive. He was, after all, the prince of sensationalistic journalism, like the kind that's so prevalent on television today. He may not have invented it, that's Joseph Pulitzer's claim to fame, but he went a long way in perfecting it. There's nothing new under the sun. You have to make reservations to take tours of the Hearst Castle. It's highly advisable to call ahead weeks in advance, especially during the summer. You must go on the guided tours. There are 3 separate tours. Tour number 1 of the main house and grounds is recommended for the first-time visitor. North of San Simeon, the land becomes increasingly sparse and desolate. It's a good idea to gas up at San Simeon or Cambria before taking the drive north. There are long stretches with no gas or food. The Pacific Coast Highway struggles up from the sea, clinging to the mountainside like a giant twisting serpent towards Big Sur. The name Big Sur evokes almost a mystic quality. Artists and poets have drawn inspiration from its majestic beauty. The Esalen Institute attracts psychologists, philosophers, and other truth seekers. In the 60s and 70s, bands of hippies flocked to Big Sur in their VW microbuses searching for enlightenment. What's the mystical attraction? Looking at Big Sur, you can't help but to ponder that a heavenly hand was responsible for its creation. Big Sur is a 90-mile region where the Santa Lucia Mountains come to an abrupt halt at the edge of the Pacific. It covers an area of about 300 square miles. The Pacific Coast Highway provides access to the most beautiful parts of Big Sur. Most of the population of Big Sur is centered in the Big Sur Valley. There are only about 1,000 people living in the area. Some seek solitude, their houses perched precariously upon cliffs that are more suitable to an eagle's nest. Most places with this much natural beauty are soon developed to make it easy for lots of people to get there. And a few people make lots of money supplying their needs. Well, that hasn't happened in Big Sur. Now, there are strict zoning laws, but the real reason is that Big Sur is just too wild to tame. The few hardy souls living there have to brave forest fires and mudslides and the inconvenience of living on the outskirts of civilization. It takes a special kind of person. For most of us, as beautiful as it is, Big Sur becomes overwhelming in its presence. This magical place demands to be left alone, and that, perhaps, is its saving grace. The most famous landmark in Big Sur is man-made. The Bixby Bridge is one of the most photographed in the world. It's been the site of many movie locations and an untold number of commercials, including Alamos. It was completed in 1937 at the astronomical cost of $250,000. A buck surely went further in those days. Another of the most scenic vistas is the Point Sur Lighthouse. Most of the time, it can only be viewed from a distance. It's a U.S. naval facility not open to the public. The light can be seen for over 20 miles. There are accommodations, nice ones at that, but there aren't many. Travelers visiting Big Sur in the busy summer months may be disappointed, and the nearest place to find lodging is in Carmel, 25 miles to the north. There are some cheaper accommodations. Now, the accommodations at Big Sur are few and far between. They are rustic and quite inexpensive. This little place cost me 50 cents, and it comes equipped with an outside shower. Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park is a good place to stop and get a look at the large California redwood trees. A short half-mile hike will take you up among the giant trees to a small waterfall. The reason trees grow so large on the northern California coastline is due to the large amount of rain they receive, especially in the winter. During the winter, the mountains are lush and green, and in the summer they're dry and brown. The weather in Big Sur is unpredictable at any time of the year. The temperatures are moderate year-round, but the fog can roll in from the Pacific at any time. Look up the word quaint in the dictionary. It reads, See Carmel. Carmel is a picture postcard village located just off the Pacific Coast Highway north of Big Sur. The Spanish mission in Carmel is one of the oldest in California, dating back to the 1700s, and it's still an active Catholic church. As a matter of fact, its founder is now a saint. Carmel has a big and beautiful public beach. Strolling the streets and window shopping at the upscale boutiques is a favorite pastime of tourists. This sleepy village made national headlines when Clint Eastwood was elected mayor. I've got just one piece of advice. Don't litter. Go ahead, punk. Make my day. There are two roads that will take you from Carmel to Monterey. One is 4 miles long and it's free. The other one is 17 miles long and you have to pay a toll. Take the long one. Trust me on this one. Astonishingly, a private company owns all of the coastal land between Pacific Grove and Carmel. The Pebble Beach Company built the famous Pebble Beach Golf Course and Resorts. There are also hundreds of very upscale homes on the property. The price of admission, $5 a carload. You pay for the surrounding beauty, not for the road itself. Is it worth the price of admission? Definitely. You don't have to stay at the pricey resorts to visit this piece of paradise. The Pebble Beach Company has taken great care to preserve the natural beauty and wildlife, and they've done a great job. 17 Mile Drive is a loop road tour of the area. You'll get a map at the guard gate. You can enter 17 Mile Drive from either Pacific Grove on the north or Carmel on the south. If you take the complete tour, you'll wind up where you started. If you're unfortunate enough to be in a hurry driving through here, take only the coastal part of the road and you'll catch the highlights. You'll visit Seal Rock. I can only guess how it got its name. It's a great place to take pictures and walk on the beach. Further south is Cypress Point Lookout. It does provide one of the most spectacular views of the Monterey Peninsula and Big Sur, but unfortunately the folks in charge put up a large and unsightly fence to keep visitors from disturbing the wildlife. Let's all learn a lesson from that. Leave Mother Nature to herself. It's great to visit an unspoiled place, but when too many of us visit it, it's bound to cause damage. Tread lightly in God's country. Just a short distance is the famous Lone Cypress, probably the most photographed tree in existence. So we took a picture. Hey, we're tourists just like the rest of you. Just north of the cypress is a house, a mansion really, that evokes the same response from everyone who sees it. I want that house. It looks as if some holy hand carved it from the rock as his habitat on Earth. Monterey has a rich history. It was the Spanish capital of California. And at this very spot, Navy Commander John Sloat sailed into the harbor and claimed California as part of the United States. It's now Fisherman's Wharf. Once home to Monterey's fishing fleet, it harbors mostly pleasure craft now. And the wharf itself is a tourist attraction. It's a rustic hodgepodge of tourist shops and attractions. But the real draw is the seafood. You can sample Dungeness crab cocktails or warm your bones on delicious clam chowder. And there are several seafood restaurants where you can sit down and have a seafood dinner. If you care to try your hand at catching your own fish, you can take a fishing expedition from the end of the pier. And if you visit at the right time of year, you can make a whale watching cruise. The coastline is the attraction in California, and nowhere is that more apparent than in Monterey and neighboring Pacific Grove. Giant cypress trees pose majestically like ballet dancers frozen in time. Even in the misty fog that frequently covers the coastline, it's a place of great beauty. Quaint bed and breakfast lodgings line the shore of Pacific Grove. If you're looking for something a little different, these are a charming change of pace. We visited the Seven Gables Inn, built in 1886. Everywhere you look, there are antique paintings and furniture. Every room is different, and many of them overlook the ocean. Many Americans have never been to a bed and breakfast, but they're quite common in Europe. In the morning and also for afternoon tea, guests share a common dining table. It's a wonderful way to meet fellow travelers. But the rooms are very private, and you can be as sociable as you choose to be. There are picturesque inns and bed and breakfasts up and down the California coastline. There are several books you can pick up at your local bookstore that will list them. These very special lodgings are often more expensive than the standard motel, and it's a good idea to make reservations, especially in the summer. But it's worth the extra time and money to make your stay on the road an unforgettable one. The sea has long played an important part in Monterey's economy. The waters behind me were once one of the richest sardine fishing areas in the world, and a huge canning operation sprung up to support the fishing industry. That was the birth of Cannery Row, as original a piece of Americana as there ever was. Its place in history was cut in stone by the great writer John Steinbeck. In his novel, Cannery Row, he wrote of the very real and eccentric folks who lived and worked here. People like the marine biologist Doc Ricketts, Steinbeck's friend and mentor, and Flora Woods, proprietor of the Lone Star Cafe, a local house of ill repute. It's a great tribute to Steinbeck's writing that he captured in an entertaining way a slice of life that was often backbreaking, cold, wet, and smelled bad to boot. Now, sardines aren't exactly a staple in our daily diets, but before the advent of refrigerators and freezers, they may have been the only seafood people who lived away from the coast were likely to eat. Actually, most of the sardines caught here did not end up on the dinner table. They were ground up and sold for fish meal fertilizer to be used in the farmlands of nearby Salinas Valley. While it lasted, Cannery Row was a booming and bustling place. The fishing fleet would bring ton after ton of sardines to the canneries, who employed many of the townspeople. Cannery Row has had its share of ups and downs. It was ravaged by fire and storm. And in 1948, as if an omen of things to come, Doc Ricketts was killed in a car crash. That year, the sardine catch was less than half the previous year, and in the years following, even less than that. The sardines had been fished out, dooming the canning business and leaving Cannery Row near abandoned and subject to the ravages of time and tide. Now, you might not pick an abandoned fish packing house as your vacation destination, but some very creative local merchants took a chance and opened up shops in the empty cannery buildings. Today, tourism is the #1 industry in Monterey, and once again, Cannery Row is playing an important part in the local economy. Some of the buildings described in Steinbeck's novel are still standing. There are souvenir and curios shops of every description and many restaurants and snack shops. The Monterey Aquarium has taken occupancy of one of the cannery buildings, but now the fish are alive and swimming instead of packed in a tin can. A Cannery Row is a fun place to visit, but if you really want to get the most from your visit, read Steinbeck's Cannery Row first. From Monterey, it's north to San Francisco, America's most beautiful city. We visit San Francisco in another edition of American Trails, now playing at the Alamo Rental Plaza in San Francisco.